Welcome to Historical Story Hub. She was humiliated and forced out of her seat, but just minutes later, the same flight attendant who shamed her was facing consequences. No one could have predicted what happened during this flight would change everything, not just for the people on board, but for the entire airline. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today, and if you enjoy stories like this, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Ava Carter stepped onto the airplane with a calm confidence that turned to few heads. She wore a tailored blazer over a sleek dress, her natural curls framing her face in one hand. She held a leather laptop bag, and in the other, her boarding pass. She made her way down the aisle, glancing at the seat numbers as she passed. Ava's demeanor was calm and composed, but there was a quiet determination in her eyes that hinted she was someone who wasn't easily rattled as she reached her assigned seat in the first-class section. She smiled politely at the passenger next to her and placed her bag in the overhead compartment. She sat down, pulling out a small notebook and pen, and started jotting down a few notes. Her focus was entirely on her task, oblivious to the curious glances she occasionally received from others around her. Moments later, Miranda Scott, one of the flight attendants, walked briskly through the cabin. Miranda, in her crisp uniform, had a sharp gaze that seemed to inspect every passenger she passed. Her eyes landed on Ava, and she paused. Something about Ava caught her attention, though it wasn't immediately clear what. Miranda's expression tightened, and she walked closer, stopping just beside Ava's seat. "Excuse me," Miranda said in a tone that was polite but carried an edge. "Can I see your boarding pass, please?" Ava looked up, surprised but unfazed. She handed over her boarding pass with a small smile. "Of course." Miranda scanned the ticket and frowned slightly. "This is for first class." "Yes," Ava said, simply, her voice steady. "That's correct." Miranda's frown deepened, as if she were trying to reconcile something in her mind. After a brief pause, she handed the boarding pass back without another word. Her lips pressed into a tight line as she walked away, but her demeanor suggested she wasn't done yet. Ava, meanwhile, shrugged off the interaction. She returned to her notes, her pen moving steadily across the paper. She didn't notice Miranda speaking quietly with another flight attendant near the Jai, casting glances back in her direction. The tension in Miranda's face was clear, even from afar. It wasn't long before Miranda returned, this time with a more authoritative air. "Miss Carter, could you step aside for a moment? I need to verify something." Ava blinked, surprised but calm. She stood taking her laptop bag with her, and followed Miranda toward the galley passengers in first class. Exchanged curious looks. Whispering among themselves, Ava's poise remained intact as she stood in the narrow space waiting for Miranda to speak. "I'm going to have to ask you to move to a different seat," Miranda said, folding her arms. "It seems there may have been a mistake with your booking." Ava tilted her head slightly, her brow furrowing a mistake. "I don't think so. I booked this ticket weeks ago, and it was confirmed. Could you double-check?" Miranda's tone turned colder. "I already checked. I don't think this seat is appropriate for you. I'll have to ask you to take a seat in the main cabin." The words hung in the air, and for the first time, Ava's expression shifted. A flicker of something disbelief annoyance crossed her face, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't understand. My ticket is valid. Why would I need to move?" Miranda stiffened her voice, dropping to a harsher whisper. "I don't have time to explain either. You move, or I'll have to call security to assist." Ava's eyes narrowed slightly, but she nodded once quietly. Returning to her seat to gather her belongings, the entire cabin seemed to be watching now. The murmurs growing louder as Ava walked toward the back of the plane. Escorted by Miranda, she could feel the stares of other passengers following her. She kept her head high, but her grip on her laptop bag tightened ever so slightly when they reached the main cabin. Miranda gestured toward an empty seat in the middle row. Ava placed her bag under the seat and sat down without a word. Miranda walked away, leaving Ava to settle into her new cramped spot. Ava looked out the window, her face calm, but her thoughts were racing somewhere between frustration and disbelief. Ava reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. Her fingers moved swiftly across the screen as she typed a message when she hit send. A small, knowing smile tugged at the corners of her lips. Ava sat quietly in her new seat, her expression unreadable. The hum of the airplane engines filled the cabin, but the tension around her was palpable. A few passengers cast sympathetic glances in her direction, while others quickly averted their eyes, pretending not to notice the awkward situation. Ava ignored them all, her focus entirely on her phone. She scrolled through her contacts and made a quick call, keeping her voice low but firm. "Hello, it's me," she began. "I need a favor. Something happened and I'd like it addressed immediately. Yes, I'm still on the plane. No need to escalate yet. Just watch for my signal." She ended the call as quickly as she had started it, slipping the phone back into her bag. Her calmness was unnerving, almost as if she knew something no one else did. Back in first class, Miranda was moving through her duties with a sense of satisfaction. She checked on other passengers, flashing polite smiles and ensuring drinks were served. Yet her thoughts kept drifting back to Ava. There was something about her composure that had unsettled Miranda, though she couldn't quite put her finger on it. As far as Miranda was concerned, she had dealt with the situation appropriately. Still, a nagging doubt lingered in the back of her mind. Meanwhile, Ava glanced at the flight attendant assigned to the main cabin, a younger woman named Clara. Unlike Miranda, Clara seemed more empathetic. She approached Ava cautiously, holding a cup of water. "Ma'am, is everything okay?" Clara asked softly, her eyes filled with concern. Ava looked up, her smile warm but brief. "I'm fine. Thank you, just a bit of a mix-up, I suppose." Clara hesitated, clearly sensing there was more to the story, but Ava's composed demeanor discouraged further probing. "Let me know if you need anything," Clara said, placing the water on Ava's tray before stepping away as the flight continued. Miranda remained unaware of the ripple effect her actions had set into motion. Ava, on the other hand, was entirely in control of the situation. She leaned back in her seat, watching the clouds outside the window, her fingers tapping rhythmically on her armrest. Her calm exterior concealed the storm brewing just beneath the surface. Ava wasn't the kind of person to let something like this slide, but she also wasn't one to lose her temper. She preferred precision over chaos, and she had already set her plan into motion. 7 minutes passed before a voice crackled over the intercom. "Ladies and gentle, we'd like to thank you for flying with us today. We hope you're enjoying your flight. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to let one of our crew members know." Ava's eyes flicked toward the front of the plane, her expression unreadable. She pulled out her notebook again, jotting down a single line before closing it with a decisive snap. Whatever her next move was, it was clear she was prepared for it. The cabin settled into a quiet rhythm, with passengers engrossed in their books, movies, or quiet conversations. Ava remained still in her seat, her expression calm, but with an intensity that hinted at something brewing beneath the surface. Miranda, however, seemed more at ease, moving through her routine with practiced efficiency. She glanced at the first-class section as she handed out drinks, feeling a small sense of victory to her. The issue had been resolved, and any discomfort it caused was now in the past, but the past was far from forgotten. And Ava leaned slightly forward in her seat and unlocked her phone again. Her fingers hovered over the screen before typing a short cryptic message. "They'll call. Soon, let me know when it's done." She hit send, the faint glow of the phone lighting up her composed face. The message went unnoticed by the surrounding passengers, who were either distracted or disinterested. Ava's lips curved into a subtle smile, but her eyes carried a sharpness that Miranda would have found unsettling. If she had noticed at the front of the plane, Miranda approached the galley and exchanged a few words with another flight attendant. Dennis, older and more seasoned, had been with the airline for years and often acted as a mentor to younger crew members. Miranda leaned in, her voice low. "Did you see that woman earlier?" she asked, glancing subtly in Ava's direction. Dennis raised an eyebrow. "Which one? The one I moved to economy?" Miranda clarified she had a ticket for first class, but something about her didn't sit right with me. She looked out of place. Dennis frowned, leaning against the counter. "Out of place? What do you mean?" Miranda hesitated, realizing she had to tread carefully. "I mean, I had a gut feeling. It's better to be cautious than sorry, right?" Dennis's frown deepened. "A gut feeling doesn't mean you can bump someone without cause. Did she do anything wrong?" "No, but Dennis cut her off with a sharp look. You'd better hope this doesn't come back to bite you. Miranda, first-class passengers don't take kindly to being moved, and neither does the airline. Miranda opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, the in-flight phone in the galley buzzed. Dennis picked it up, his expression neutral as he listened a moment later, his brow furrowed, and he glanced at with a mix of curiosity and concern. It's for you, he said, handing her the phone. They're asking for you by name. Miranda's heart skipped a beat. She hesitated before taking the phone, her fingers tightening around the receiver. This is Miranda, she said cautiously. The voice on the other end was calm, but firm. This is the airline executive office. We've received a direct complaint about an incident involving a first-class passenger. We'll need you to provide a detailed report upon landing. For now, ensure all passengers are treated respectfully and refrain from further altering seating arrangements without proper justification. Miranda's face paled slightly as the weight of the words sank in. Yes, of course, she stammered. I'll make sure everything is handled appropriately. As she hung up, her hand trembled slightly. Dennis watched her closely, his expression unreadable. What's going on? Nothing, Miranda muttered, but the nervous edge in her voice betrayed her. She glanced toward the main cabin where Ava sat, her calm figure now taking on an entirely new meaning. For the first time, Miranda felt a flicker of unease. Ava, seated quietly with her notebook closed on her lap, seemed oblivious to the phone call. But as Miranda returned to her duties, Ava's lips curved into the faintest smile. She had just started turning the tide, and Miranda was only beginning to realize the storm headed her way. Miranda tried to shake off her unease as she moved through the cabin, but the phone call lingered in her mind like a shadow. She forced herself to focus, smiling at passengers and performing her duties with robotic precision. Yet her gaze kept drifting toward Ava, who sat quietly in the main cabin, unbothered and calm. It was unsettling the way Ava seemed so composed, as if she knew something Miranda didn't. Meanwhile, Ava sat back in her seat, occasionally glancing at her watch. She crossed her legs and picked up the in-flight magazine, flipping through it absent-mindedly to anyone watching. She looked relaxed, as though nothing about her day had been disrupted, but inside her mind, every step of her plan was unfolding exactly as she had intended. The flight attendant Clara approached Ava again, her kind demeanor a stark contrast to Miranda's earlier hostility. "Excuse me, ma'am," Clara said softly. "Would you like anything to drink? Maybe a snack?" Ava looked up, offering a polite smile. "Just water, please." Clara nodded and returned moments later with a cup of water and a small napkin. She placed them gently on Ava's tray table. "If there's anything else you need, let me know." She added kindly. Ava's eyes softened. "Thank you, Clara," she said, glancing at her name tag. Her tone was warm and her gratitude genuine. Clara gave a small smile and walked away, leaving Ava to her thoughts. Miranda watched the exchange from afar, her unease growing the way Ava interacted with Clara, so poised and polite, it didn't match the narrative Miranda had built in her mind. It bothered her more than she cared to admit. She felt an inexplicable urge to reassert control over the situation, but she knew she had to tread carefully. Now the call from the executive office had made that clear as the plane cruised at 30,000 feet. The hum of the engines provided a steady backdrop to the tension building in Miranda's chest. She made her way to the galley again, where Dennis was busy preparing the next round of refreshments. "Everything okay?" Dennis asked, glancing at her. Miranda hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, fine," she said curtly, but Dennis wasn't convinced. He leaned closer, his voice low. "Look, whatever's going on, you'd better hope you didn't mess with the wrong passenger. First class isn't for amateurs, Miranda. These people have connections." Miranda stiffened at his words but said nothing. Instead, she busied herself with arranging cups, though her mind was far from the task. Dennis's warning had struck a nerve. Who was Ava Carter really, and why did she feel like she had misjudged her at the same time? Ava's phone buzzed quietly in her lap. She glanced down at the screen, her expression unreadable. The message was short. "All set. They're monitoring." Ava slid the phone back into her bag without a word and took a sip of water. Her movements were deliberate, calm, and unhurried, as if she had all the time in the world. The subtle tension between Ava and Miranda wasn't lost on a few observant passengers. A man across the aisle from Ava leaned over slightly and whispered, "That flight attendant has been giving you a hard time, hasn't she?" Ava looked at him, her expression neutral. "It's nothing I can't handle," she replied softly. The man raised an eyebrow, sensing there was more to the story, but he didn't push further. Ava turned her gaze back to the window, watching the endless stretch of clouds. Her calm exterior masked the quiet satisfaction she felt the gears were turning, and Miranda had no idea how far-reaching the consequences of her actions would be. Back in the first-class section, Miranda felt her unease deepen. Every passing minute seemed to stretch endlessly, the weight of the earlier phone call pressing on her. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something she would be able to control. The atmosphere in the cabin grew heavier with each passing minute, though the plane itself remained steady in its flight. Miranda's movements were more rigid now, her once confident stride replaced with nervous glances. She tried to keep herself busy checking seatbelts and distributing drinks, but her mind kept returning to Ava every time Miranda glanced toward the main cabin. Ava seemed as calm as ever, sitting with an air of quiet authority that Miranda found unnerving. Ava, meanwhile, appeared unbothered. She continued to gaze out of the window, occasionally jotting something down in her notebook. Her actions seemed so mundane, yet there was an undercurrent of purpose to everything she did. Passengers seated nearby couldn't help but notice her composure contrasting sharply with Miranda's growing unease. Whispers began circulating among them, though no one dared to speak openly about the tension. Miranda's discomfort reached a breaking point when Dennis approached her in the galley again. He handed her a folded note, his expression unreadable. "The captain wants to see you," he said quietly. "What? Why?" Miranda asked, her voice sharper than intended. Dennis shrugged, though there was a faint edge of disapproval in his gaze. He didn't say, "Just go." Reluctantly, Miranda made her way toward the cockpit as she stepped in the door closed behind her, sealing her off from the cabin. Captain Harris, a middle-aged man with a calm yet authoritative demeanor, turned to face her. His co-pilot glanced briefly at her before returning his attention to the controls. Captain Harris began, his tone measured. "We've received another call from the executive office." Miranda's heart sank. "Sir, the captain held up a hand, cutting her off. "This is serious. The passenger you moved. Miss Ava Carter is not just any passenger. She's connected to the airline's board of directors. We're under direct orders to ensure she's treated with the utmost respect for the remainder of the flight." Miranda's mouth went dry. "I didn't know," she stammered. "I thought, did you think," Captain Harris interrupted, his voice growing firmer, "or did you assume, because from where I'm sitting it looks like you acted without cause? That's unacceptable." Miranda opened her mouth to defend herself, but no words came. The captain sighed, rubbing his temples. "Here's what's going to happen. You'll return to your duties and ensure there are no further incidents when we land. You'll provide a full report to the ground team. Until then, do not approach Miss Carter unless absolutely necessary. Is that clear?" "Yes, sir." Miranda whispered, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. The captain nodded toward the door. Dismissed. Miranda left the cockpit. Her mind racing, she returned to the galley where Dennis gave her a questioning look. She ignored him instead, grabbing a tray of drinks and forcing herself to move through the cabin. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured coffee for a passenger. In first class, spilling a few drops onto the tray, she cursed under her breath, quickly wiping it away back in the main cabin. Ava remained undisturbed, her every action deliberate and measured, as Miranda passed by. Ava glanced up briefly, her eyes locking with Miranda for a split second. There was no malice in her gaze, only an unsettling calmness, as if she knew exactly how this would end. Miranda quickened her pace, retreating to the galley once more. For the first time in her career, she felt completely out of control, and she hated it. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Miranda's steps faltered as she returned to the galley, her breathing uneven. She tried to focus on the tasks at hand, but the captain's words echoed in her mind. "She's connected to the board." The phrase hit her like a punch to the gut. How could she have overlooked something so important? Miranda prided herself on her instincts, but now those same instincts seemed to have betrayed her. She leaned against the counter, her hands gripping the edge tightly. Dennis watched her from the corner of his eye as he finished arranging the snack cart. "Are you going to tell me what's going on?" he asked, his tone cautious but curious. Miranda hesitated, debating whether to confide in him. Finally, she sighed, her voice low. "The woman I moved. She has ties to the board. The captain just told me." Dennis straightened his expression, shifting from mild curiosity to alarm. "The board. Are you serious?" Miranda nodded, her face pale. "I had no idea. I don't know what. I thought she just didn't seem like." She stopped herself, realizing how her words sounded. Dennis crossed his arms, his tone sharp. "She didn't seem like what Miranda, like someone who belongs in first class." Miranda didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she turned away, pretending to busy herself with the inventory. Dennis shook his head, a mix of disbelief and disappointment flashing across his face. Meanwhile, in the main cabin, Ava glanced at her watch again. The flight was nearing its halfway point, but she showed no signs of impatience. She reached into her bag and pulled out